Good morning. Today is Monday, January 13th, 2025. It's 5:12 a.m. And I'm just transitioning now. I've listened to 2 episodes of the Telepathy tapes this morning. I read the book of Colossians, and I've had some prayer, and I am just processing this information. It's profound in multiple ways, because I think this is potentially, this is the first thing that I've read or seen on YouTube, for example, at this level of exposure of the demonstrated fidelity of people with spiritual gifts like telepathy and some of these other subjects. And this is this is going to be a very, very interesting path that this information takes. I can't imagine that it's not going to move into the mainstream, although it might be withheld. I don't know. I'm really, really curious about what this is going to how this will manifest over the next 3 months, 2-3 months. Given that this has only been out for 2 weeks on YouTube. It sounds like this podcast initially went forth, but I don't know how wide a viewing that has. I might be able to look it up just as a podcast and see if I'm able to get statistics on it. The thing is, as I've said before, and I was reading again today the verse in Colossians. I wonder if I can dig that up real fast. The significance of that, that puts all of this in perspective. Colossians chapter 2, verse 8. See to it that no one takes you captive by philosophy and empty deceit, according to human tradition, according to the elemental spirits of the world, and not according to Christ. And that, I think, is the measure. And what's so fascinating is that the journey that I've been on this past year has been one of kind of a reductionist approach to Christian doctrine, and not intentionally that way. That's kind of what I describe it, looking at it after the fact. I just realized that the bottom line is that the gospel of Jesus is about loving others. He said, if you love me, you'll keep my commandments. My commandment is that you love each other, and that forgiveness is conditional. Our forgiveness is based on our ability and the level of our own forgiveness. So there's this conditional fidelity that's a part of our receipt of forgiveness, which is a kind of a proof of integrity of our heart in love, because you really have to love humanity. Love has to be at the source of who you are to forgive. That's the whole point. So it's the activation, that aspect of forgiveness is the activation of love inside of you, which is a earmark. It's the testimony of Christ inside of you. And it is this aspect of love, though, this universal, it sounds like that's a universal message coming out of this community. of these non-speakers and the messages that they give, that love is paramount, even though they talk about talking with the dead and all of these other peripheral elements that have traditionally been viewed as, having nefarious sources and intelligent evil type sources, which I want to point out does not dismiss the existence of intelligent evil. Rather, I think this whole experience opens the whole doorway into look at this phenomenon as a path to understanding and greater reality, which I think effectively highlights the gospel of Jesus as the prescriptive path to human survival, because the gospel is about love. And the filmmaker Kai, who's doing these telepathy tapes, is, trying to put together and publish evidence and testimonies and validation for the anecdotal evidence that has been accumulated by the parents and teachers and so forth of these individuals, and does an excellent job of that. But I also want to point out that we have a historical record of anecdotal evidence of this level of spirituality that has exists, and many people, speaking people, neurotypical, to use the vocabulary, the vernacular that is in the tape, the neurotypical population also exhibit and talk about having these type of experiences in reality, myself included, from a spiritual standpoint and the metaphysical aspect of what it means to speak in tongues, for example, and to pray in the Spirit, and to have had a experiential revelation of Jesus Christ. So there is definitely an intersection here. And the thing I want to point out, because I know I will do this with great, what I want to say, this is most likely to be misunderstood by pretty much everyone, and possibly even these in this community. This is not meant to be a criticism. It's meant to be simply a critical observation. Those are two different things. My critical observation is that these testimonies are true, and as they are true and validate this experience, they are also validating the landscape of this world. And that landscape, I believe, I should say validating the biblical landscape, which is the existence of these spiritual realms, which has the sources of intelligent evil and God, and good and bad, good and evil, and God as being the representation of intelligent goodwill, I will say, gets co-opted by intelligent evil, that general term, and that's why Christ is so significant, because in Christ you eliminate all of the potential influence, as Paul would say, of the elemental spirits of the world. You have Jesus Christ, the man, his testimony. He lived, he taught, he did miracles, he cast out demons, He was crucified, he died, and he rose again. And he spent time with the apostles and the people. They saw him in his risen form. He taught them for a season, a short season, and then he ascended back to the Father and said he's coming back. And he said, now I want you to go and make disciples of all men, and teaching them to observe the things that I've told you. So, what did he tell us to do? He told us to love each other. That's the primary objective of the gospel. And so there's a connection there. I feel like the journey that I've been on has led me to this simplistic, if you will, but I may be a reductionist. I don't even want to use the word fundamentalist because that has such a negative connotation, and rightly so, because what people refer to as fundamentalism refers to this dogmatic adherence to interpretations and other doctrinal axioms and dogma that have been added on to what I believe is the core, the elements of the gospel. What you hear Paul, Peter, James, and John, the New Testament writers, all encouraging and saying is the highest attribute of human behavior, and that is to love others. That is the perfect law of Christ. That's the objective. I think that's why Christianity is significant, because in all of its various diluted forms, you scrape away all of the scab of tradition and deception that have been layered onto it, and what do you come down to? You come down to the perfect law of Christ. You come down to holiness, without which no man shall see the Lord. And that holiness is simply the love of God in action in us, in people, is the love of Christ. It is through that lens that I look at this and I say, this is a beautiful testimony. This is an excellent work that's being done to document this. At the same time, I feel compelled as a minister of the gospel of Jesus Christ, of the Word of God, of His love, to point out that when you open the door to spiritual reality, you have to understand that this doorway goes both ways, and it's a doorway into the outside, if you will, the outside of our realm, into the realm of the Spirit, which all spirits reside, and intelligent evil is a part of that realm, and we are daily under attack. We are daily under the influence of being deceived and attempts to be deceived. The enemy's intelligent evil has a motive, and that is to steal, kill, and destroy humanity. To steal what we have, to kill us, and to destroy humanity. And that enmity started in the garden in Genesis 3, from a biblical perspective. But also from the biblical perspective, we have the prophecy, the prophetic revelations of the coming Messiah. Then we have the testimony of Jesus coming in the flesh, being crucified and then rising again. And we have the testimony of the impact that that message of Christ had in the first century, the early church. So we have this whole backdrop now I've been thinking and that there's a way to scientifically prove God. And I was thinking you could do it by looking at things like narcissism and these other behaviors that are universal across culture, and discover, and kind of reverse engineer and look at that and rule out other causes of these behaviors, and consider the fact that a spiritual influence is a possibility. Now, this is, I think, an extension. I don't hear this coming out of this group of people or kind of teachings or awareness that is being put forth by this podcaster, this filmmaker, or the doctor who is behind this, Dr. Jean Powell. I want to get her book and read it so I can understand maybe more what her perspective is, because that may create more of a signal that, it should shed some insight onto how to interpret all of this. Because this has been through the lens of her ministry, that this has a ministry, her practice, we'll say. And everybody loves the kids. You can't do this without being moved. You can't listen to this as a human being and not be moved by these stories. But at the same time, we have to understand, intelligent evil doesn't care about anything, about anybody, and will use and can pretend and can mock and can make and sound really, really authentic. All you have to do is really get to know a narcissist. You will understand how authentic these individuals can be, and how authentically deceptive people can be when it comes to evil in the world. I think that's why my question to this community would be about Jesus in particular. What are your thoughts about Jesus in particular? How does Jesus compare to the other gods? And so forth. I think that would be telling, because I think there would probably be a mix. There would probably be those that come back and say, yes, Jesus is God, or no, he's just one of the gods kind of scenario. They talk about God and gods, which is consistent with a Deuteronomy 32, a Psalm 82 cosmic worldview, biblical worldview, and so all these paradigms kind of work together. So that's kind of where we're at right now. It's 5:31. I'm going to get back into my pitch development this morning and the process of my own journey, and I'm just trusting God. I just spent 2 hours in this path this morning. This is obviously my passion, and now I got to go make some tents and try to put together something that I can do to sell this business and finance my ministry. That's really the whole point of this. So anyway, just wanted to capture those thoughts this morning, Monday, January 13th, 2025, and we'll catch you again later today.